Now we get to hear about digital democracy from California State University, presented by Sam Blakesley and Christine Robertson. Really look forward to this presentation.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having us. I'm Dr. Sam Blakesley here today with Christine Robertson. Christine and I co-founded Digital Democracy, a project born out of our experience working in the state legislature. Me as an elected member of the California State Assembly and the State Senate, Christine as the chief of staff in both bodies. Digital democracy pairs emerging technologies with public policy reforms to drive real accountability in state legislatures. As legislative practitioners, we were alarmed that California, like other states in the nation, produces no written or searchable record documenting what actually occurs during the thousands of hours of committee hearings and floor debate. For years, I observed that the only people consistently in the room monitoring the discussions that are occurring are lobbyists. They're like intelligence officers, diligently collecting information about the hearing dynamic itself, what concerns are being voiced, which arguments are working, which legislators are open to persuasion, and so on. But this uniquely actionable information set, the actual debate and discussion, was only available to those who were in the room. Everyone else, the citizen, the community activist, the reporter, they were functionally shut out of the process. They could only obtain a static snapshot of what had happened, a vote tally, and the amended text after it left the committee, with no idea why the bill had changed, who had advocated for those changes, and which issues and which members may still be in flux. It became obvious that a searchable record of the actual debate and discussion was a uniquely powerful resource for anyone interested in effectively engaging the state legislature and driving policies from that organization. Launched in 2015, the first phase of development focused on transparency. The platform uses advanced technologies such as natural language processing, artificial intelligence, and machine learning to convert the legislature's video feed into a searchable full-text transcript, complete with speaker information. And that information is contextualized with relevant information that pertains to the bills, the lobbyists, and the campaign contribution data that attach to every one of those conversations. Digital democracy empowers users with the same actionable insider information that's used by lobbyists for precision advocacy. Now, here to talk about the second and current phase of our work, impact and engagement, is Christine Robertson.
Thank you. The second phase focuses on empowering stakeholders, specifically community advocates and press, to leverage our content for engagement, accountability, and reform. Tools within the system allow users to create email alerts, video clips, and share engaging video content through social media to educate and activate their community networks. Developed at the request of community advocacy organizations, we are now in initial deployment of our engagement platform, a customizable, brandable version of digital democracy hosted directly on any organization's website. The engagement platform offers an action center through which organizations can design sophisticated grassroots advocacy campaigns. Our media collaborations include partnering with Pulitzer Prize-winning PolitiFacts to launch the nation's first automated State House fact-check feed that algorithmically mines our transcripts and surfaces fact-checkable statements by lawmakers. We're developing district-specific content feeds to resource hometown papers with information and video links summarizing what their representatives said and did any given week. And we're pairing university data scientists with investigative reporters to query our big data to reveal the underlying factors that drive legislative outcomes. Following the successful launch of our California platform, earlier this year we scaled into New York and will go live in Florida and Texas in January 2018. Together, these 4 states represent 1/3 of the US population. In addition to state scaling, the cities of Los Angeles, San Francisco, and San Diego asked us to collaborate on a local government version of digital democracy. And finally, we're laying the technical groundwork to unlock up to 30 California state regulatory agencies, allowing the public to monitor the entire life cycle of public policy, from legislative enactment through the promulgation of rules and regulations implementing statutes. The successful launch of digital democracy educated the press and public that video coverage of legislative hearings was incomplete and sometimes illegal to use. This laid a groundwork for a series of subsequent policy reforms. Proposition 54, a statewide ballot measure co-sponsored by Dr. Blakeslee amending the California Constitution, was passed in November 2016 with over 65% support. The measure requires that the legislature provide comprehensive video coverage of all proceedings and eliminated the prior statute that criminalized the use of hearing videos as political speech. Within its first years, digital democracy has begun a virtuous cycle of developing innovative technologies, unlocking actionable data, connecting the data with users, and driving policy reforms to remove these barriers, and then continue scaling. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. Pete, thank you.
Hi. As you mentioned just towards the tail end, Christine, the part of this, and this is resonant with many of the applications here that we see, that there is part of this where there's real innovation, but the innovation also has to drive innovative regulation and legislation to enable this. And obviously this is the case in California. First, to this question of transferability, do you have a sense as to how many other states have these regulations around the illegality of using these transcripts? And to that point, how much other regulatory or legislative groundwork would have to be done in these other states to enable the use of digital democracy?
Sure, it's a very good question. We've identified about a dozen states that have explicit reuse prohibitions where they assert copyright ownership of their hearing videos. And under federal law, states retain the right to copyright public records. So the legality of these copyright reuse policies is a subject of great legal debate. It's never been adjudicated in the courts, but there is some precedence that's been laid down in California, as well as a recent court ruling in federal court in Texas this last December, where although it wasn't appealed by the states were sued, challenging the legality of their reuse limitations, and the court found that the reuse limitations were a violation of the First Amendment. So we believe that although states do assert some copyright ownership and limitations, that they are vulnerable to legal challenge and probably are not constitutional.
And so just a quick follow-up then, on the other states you mentioned that you're working with, these very large states, New York, Florida, and others, are those part of these dozen states, or are they just ones that don't have
No,
those
these are
codes?
states that do not have an existing reuse limitation.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Linda.
I'd be interested in examples that you can give of how the platform has been used to actually change the debate on a live matter that's before a legislature.
Sure. So we have a few different examples. I'll give an example from a user that used the platform to help craft legislation. We had a citizen, she was a mother. Her adult daughter was developmentally disabled and died in the care of state care providers, and she identified an issue, a statutory issue, where there was an inadequate training requirement. She approached her local representative and said, "I'd like you to author legislation." He said, "I would like you, the mother, to draft legislation, bring it back to me." She did, and then he asked her, "Now we've received opposition, please figure out how to remove the opposition." So she called us and said, "What do I do? I'm a mom." And so we walked her through the platform, and she learned from the platform how to do exactly what Dr. Blakeslee said: gather intelligence about the committee members, prior legislation that was related, what the arguments had been on those prior measures, which members of the committee seemed amenable to the types of issues that she wanted to raise, how those members of the committee interacted with the lobbyists that would be representing the opposition that she needed to navigate around. And from working through the platform, she was able to develop a custom advocacy strategy that she then brought back to the legislative office. We also have community organizations. One in particular represents small business owners in California that are immigrants. A lot of them are English language learners, and they deal with what are known as predatory lawsuits around the Americans with Disabilities Act. And this organization has used the platform to mine our video content, because this is the context in which complex bills are discussed in plain language. So when witnesses come in, when authors come in to present bills, they describe the heart of the issue, why this issue should be addressed in whatever particular way is being proposed in the measure, and then hear debating perspectives from witnesses on both sides of the issue. And so this organization is using this plain language discussion around the issue to disseminate content through social media to their grassroots membership to educate them about the issues without having to send them very difficult, terse bill text, which is very intimidating, particularly for somebody that is an immigrant that may be an English language learner. And then also, they are bringing in their members to present first-person testimony to articulate how whatever the proposal is would impact them and their community, and then sharing those clips out with the network so that their grassroots members are not only hearing the issue discussed in an accessible way, but they're seeing the faces of their neighbors, their community partners participating in the process, and it's designed to lower the intimidation factor and draw them into engagement and advocacy.
The tool is designed to level the playing field. Obviously, powerful special interests in state houses obviously can hire very competent lobbyists who are there 24/7, essentially working the building. But what we found when we served in the legislature was that there were huge numbers of organizations with grassroots members who were very passionate about trying to tackle their problem, whether it was veteran issues or homeless issues or healthcare issues or housing issues, but they didn't have the money, the resources, or ability to engage the way these powerful entities that had on-site lobbyists could. So this tool is designed essentially to commoditize, to take technology and put into the hands of all these grassroots organizations on their own website. So they're talking to their own members transparently right through our tool without anyone knowing it's our tool. It's now their tool to be able to activate their organizations, their members, to talk to their media, to talk to their legislator, to talk to their hometown paper, and be able to mobilize, but with timely information that pertains to the actual committee hearing that is in play. And as we've seen with the resistance movement and other efforts around the nation, there's boundless energy to try and affect transformation. But there are very few tools that actually can go into the hands of those people with energy to affect the decision makers because there's this firewall between them. This technology breaks down that firewall so they can get right in the room and engage and activate just the way powerful special interests do.
Yeah, Dave.
As you said, you're rolling out phase 2 now, which focuses on engagement with just those advocacy groups. How long do you think it'll be before you get to a kind of critical mass where this technology is actually used pretty widely and has begun to have a significant impact on the democratic process in California?
You know, and there's two ways of looking at that. One could be impact is defined by volume, the number of engagements. Another metric would be the effectiveness with which organizations use it for impact. And so we've already seen examples of the latter, where organizations are using it and they believe that they are increasing pressure on their district representative because they've been able to mobilize community members to pay attention to issues and sensitive votes that the community otherwise would not have noticed. In terms of volume, right now, one of the things that we're doing this year is we're working with community foundations to put the tool in the hands of community nonprofits. And so our partner for that is an organization called Cal Nonprofits, and they are like a trade association for California nonprofits, and they have 10,000 statewide members. And so we're working with them to have open, free trainings for these community nonprofits and then resource them with this engagement version of our platform. So by connecting with partners like Cal Nonprofits, we think that we'll be able to have wide adoption in a relatively short time frame.
And if I could share one more element to the adoption piece, which I think is relevant. As you know, the number of State House reporters has fallen dramatically, almost catastrophically. The ability to actually report what's happening in any State House has become increasingly challenging as what attention that does exist typically goes to DC. This tool is also designed to put into the hands of every hometown newspaper with this email alerts, information about what their legislator has been doing with almost immediate notification when your legislator speaks. Generally when they speak on a particular bill of interest, when they speak on a topic of interest, you create very sophisticated queries, put that into the system, and then it will speak to any reporter or any editor or any publisher in any paper showing exactly what their legislator has been up to. So you suddenly turn all these hometown papers into State House reporters because they have primary source material. They can see exactly what that legislator said on the record. They don't have to make a phone call and get that legislator to talk back to them because oftentimes they won't return that call. They have primary source material. So as former practitioners of the legislative process, we really tried to design a tool that would create maximum impact because we knew that when people were talking about what we were doing in our district, it got our attention. I mean, it was all well and good to be talking and spamming our fax machine and doing all the things that creates volume, but when we saw people knew what we were doing and talking with their hometown paper, talking with their networks, talking with their PTA, we took that very, very seriously. So this entire concept is built around creating tools that will drive the way legislators think and act and behave, which we believe will produce better governance.
Linda, thank you.
We noticed the army of students that were involved in helping you to stand this up, and we're curious on the replication. Do you need an army of students in every jurisdiction?
So this is an ongoing R&D project, and I hope it will remain an ongoing R&D project for a long time, because one of the things that we're trying to do is continually increase our utilization of artificial intelligence and other technologies to produce transcripts, speaker identification in a timely and accurate manner. And so our use of students, I imagine, will remain pretty strong for the foreseeable future. That said, the addition of new states or new jurisdictions doesn't necessarily proportionately increase the number of student headcount. And so as we scale and add new states, as we add agencies, we don't see this massive need to add new students. So as we scale, we're scaling in-house. We're not seeking to replicate this in other state universities. We're adding states that's based at the California State University.
Okay, thank you. Your time is up, but I'm going to ask you a question that I learned last night because I found it so fascinating. Could you just, for our audience and for this group, describe how many hours the legislatures in each legislature meet?
Sure.
Because
So
I found this, you're just going to have to bear with me because this is my point of privilege question.
So every state is very, very different, which is one of the wonderful things, one of the challenging things about what we do is making sure that we are adapting to every state. And so a state like California averages about 1,500 hours of annual hearings. That's committees and floor sessions. But the size of the state, the size of the issues, the size of the population has no bearing on the frequency or the duration with which legislatures meet. So the state of Texas does just over twice as many hearing hours as California. The state of Oregon does more than California, while the state of Colorado does about a quarter of the hours of California, and Hawaii does a fraction of Colorado. So some states are down a couple hundred, whereas other states are up in the several thousand.
So I thought you'd like to know how hard your legislators actually work. It has nothing to do with what they're paid or how much work they actually have to do. Thank you very much. We get a 10-minute break from that.